Good afternoon. I'm Sarah Sumbrum, Artistic Director at Dance Cleveland, and today we are so excited because we are joined on Zoom by Michael Novak, Artistic
Hi,
Director
everyone.
of Paul Taylor Dance Company. Hi, Michael.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank you for
Yes,
having me and
we
having
are.
the company.
Yes, we are so excited to have the company back, and I think it's so special because this will be the first time that we have the company here in Cleveland with you as the Artistic Director.
Yes, that is true. Very exciting.
So I wanted to get started for people who have not seen the company before. If you could give us a little
Mm,
background about, just why Paul Taylor Dance Company is so significant to modern dance here in America. I mean, I feel like it's such an iconic dance company. People sometimes hear pieces of music and think of Paul Taylor Dance Company.
mm.
So give me your take on why the company is just so important for people to see.
Well, Paul Taylor created the company in 1954, so we're going to be celebrating our 70th anniversary this year, which is really
Yeah.
exciting. Um, Paul Taylor was a painter, and then he was a competitive swimmer, and then
Mm.
he was a dancer, and then he was a very prolific choreographer. And I mentioned those things in that order because Paul's approach to dance making and to choreography, the relationship of painting is actually very essential in terms of how Paul saw the proscenium stage and how he designed his dances and who he collaborated with to create very unique, beautiful landscapes,
Mhm.
um, or moodscapes on the actual theater. So there's that lens. He also was a very prolific swimmer. He was a competitive swimmer when he was at Syracuse University before going to Juilliard to study dance. So I like to tell audiences who are new to Taylor when it comes to our movement style, imagine a Michael Phelps type physique,
Mhm.
tall, athletic, long wingspan, incredibly powerful back, very athletic. That was Paul's approach to movement was coming from that place. So you take that type of physique, that power, the athleticism, the fluidity, incredible fluidity, hours in the water, and you
Mhm.
combine it with a little bit of George Balanchine, a little bit of Merce Cunningham, a little bit of Martha Graham and Anthony Tudor, and you get a movement style that is expressive, dramatic, athletic, technical, extraordinarily musical. And Paul really represents kind of in the family tree of modern dance. He's the last of the what we call the third generation
Mhm.
who really defined the art form. And what Paul did that was very unique relative to a lot of the other kind of founding members of modern dance was an emphasis on gesture and expression. He's called the master of light and dark. So we are known for very funny, comedic, lighthearted works, and then the full spectrum all the way to incredibly horrific and terrifying works. So we're as much a, I would say, as much a dance company as we are a company of expression.
And you could
So when you
definitely
come,
see that. I mean, the dancers take on the different characters. I know last time when we had the company, we had the piece, I forget the title, but it had the bugs. All the dancers were dressed as different bugs.
Gossamer Gallants, yeah,
I also learned that Paul Taylor, was a bug collector, which I
he
had not known
loved
before.
he loved insects. Yeah,
Yeah,
he
so
loved
funny.
animals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just think it's so cool, like you said, that the ability of the dancers to take on really serious roles. I mean, we're going to have Promethean Fire, which I
Hmm.
would love to hear about in a little bit. But going from a piece about bugs to a piece that is a little bit more dramatic and serious, I think, like you said, it's just shows the vast array
There's a
of
huge
ability.
range. There's a
Hmm.
huge range. And I think what's interesting too is that, dance styles have evolved over decades. And being 70 years old, Paul was making dances in the 50s and the 60s, and how we as communities in New York City, how dancers expressed themselves in the 50s and 60s was different than it was in the 80s and the 90s, was different from how it is in the 2000s. So when you look at the library of work that we have, you're not just getting expression, you're also getting these snippets of how dancers at that time inhabited their feelings within their body. So it makes it an incredibly rich tapestry as an artist and as a director to
That's what I'm
curate.
so excited too for this upcoming program. I mean, we have Airs, which is an older work, of course, made in the 70s. Beautiful classical movement. I feel like the ballerina in me loves that piece in particular. And then, of course, Promethean Fire, which was an older work that Paul made before his death. And then finishing out, we also have a brand new choreographer, a female choreographer on the company, which I love that kind of twist. So somewhere in the middle, I'm very excited about that. Can you tell me a little bit about the 3 different pieces?
Yeah, so the program opens with Airs. Paul Taylor choreographed Airs in 1978. It actually premiered with American Ballet Theater. So it was kind of it was one of Paul's first works thinking of the ballet vernacular and how to move his style from the modern dance world to the ballet world. So if audiences tuning in, you might know it. It's licensed to a lot of ballet companies around the world. It's to the music of Handel. And Paul spliced together, I think, 7 or 8 different concerti and mixtape it, to create this incredibly beautiful, rich work. It's all Handel. It's incredibly beautiful. It's called Airs. But it is inspired by the movement of water. We're talking about Paul being a swimmer. It's inspired by the ebbs and the flows. So it's almost like the dancers are just sitting a little bit underneath the current. And it's the air that's pushing the waves.
You can feel them just sweeping. I mean,
it's incredibly, it's beautiful. And it showcases that flow that's within the company, but also incredible musicality. Paul's work to Baroque composers, we'll get to Promethean Fire in a second, is incredibly famous. How he heard Baroque music, the basso continuo that's in Baroque music, and how Paul was able to kind of, what you're hearing on the top of the instrumentation, Paul would somehow use movement so that you heard what was coming underneath it. And there's this juxtaposition of the music that is fascinating in Airs.
You can see all the different layers. I always think
there's lots of layers.
Maybe one grouping of dancers and then change your focus to another grouping of dancers. And you often will catch different musical instruments or different tempos.
Yes. Paul loved that. It's definitely a dance. I mean, it is famous for a reason, and it's in our repertoire all the time because of its craft and its musicality. So we leave that world of fluidity and groundedness and beauty, and we enter the world of Amy Hall Garner, who is an incredible choreographer. She is hot on the scene right now. She just had a world premiere at Alvin Ailey. She has a premiere at New York City Ballet this spring. Incredibly dynamic and diverse choreographer. She went to Juilliard. She's worked on Broadway. She worked as a Rockette. She worked on one of Beyonce's national tours. So she comes into the studio with incredible commercial background and expertise, but also a sense of craft and musicality and nuance that you might find in the concert dance world. And she brings them together, and she brought them together with us at Taylor to big band music. And it's called Somewhere in the Middle, and it's music by Sarah Vaughan and Duke Ellington and Count Basie. And it is just Amy's approach to dance making right now is to really harness joy and what she calls the heartbeat, and to keep the audience's heartbeat up and driving, and that dance can bring life and excitement.
I love that, because here in Cleveland it can get very dreary and very gray. And I will say, when I watched this piece, I thought this would be perfect to bring in the winter, because it's just going to definitely bring some light.
Audiences love it. Yeah. It's incredible music. And then Amy collaborated with Mark Eric for the costumes, and Donald Martini, who's this famous sculptor who does a lot of murals for commercial buildings, museums, art galleries, private collections. And then Jennifer Tipton did the lighting, and it just, again, it's this bright, vibrant, fun work that will be maybe needed, in the early winter months. So we leave we leave the world of Amy Hall Garner, and then we go to Paul Taylor's Promethean Fire, which he choreographed in 2002. It's the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, to the toccata and fugue that many people might know. And it was choreographed after 9/11. It's not necessarily about 9/11, and Paul was very clear that it was not in response to it. But the work is very much, it's all 16 dancers, so it's the first time that the full company is expressed entirely on stage. And it really is this prolific work, where communities and the structures that hold them together slowly start to collapse, and we're revealed, like kind of the core of what brings humanity together. And then there's this return and like claiming a future. And it's premiere, and it's a work that, regardless of when it was made or what it may or may not have been created to or in response of, it speaks to the sense of renewal, and that through catastrophe or very challenging times, like the human spirit can coalesce and it can endure and transmit hope.
Yeah, and I feel like that theme, I mean, you definitely feel that resonating through the piece. And obviously, no matter what's going on in the world, it's like, unfortunately, we always feel like there's those times. And I think that this piece will definitely kind of bring some coming together and you know, like you said, it wasn't necessarily made in response to 9/11, but I think it's very relatable and translates
It's
to
relatable
today.
to every, yeah, and I think that's the thing about, you speak about Paul Taylor's repertoire, and we often are asking ourselves, like, what constitutes a masterpiece? And I often think it's something that stands the test of time, that speaks to something that is deeper than just the year it was made, that there's an undercurrent of expression, of connection, of what it means to be alive, and the complexity of that at all times in history. And Promethean Fire, definitely, and airs in a very, albeit different way, but Promethean Fire definitely holds that space for that.
Well, so let's shift gears. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. I mean, this will be the very first time that our audience gets to meet you. Of course, they may have met you before as a dancer. So tell me about that transition from dancer to artistic director, and what are your goals for the company?
So I started dancing with the company. Well, I started at the school in 2007, joined the company in 2010, and I was a dancer with the company for 8 years, originally from Chicago. So I'm a Midwestern boy. And I danced in the company for 8 years, and Paul Taylor called me over to his apartment, and he sat me down and he told me that he'd been giving this a lot of thought, that I was going to be the one to take over when he passed away.
Amazing.
And there was no application, there was no putting my hat, and like in the ring. It was just, he had been watching me for some time, and he told me it's what was going to happen.
Hand selected.
Hand selected, and an incredible opportunity, an incredible gift, an incredible responsibility. And that was in 2018, and the appointment was announced that spring. I started July 1, 2018, and he died at end of August. And I stepped right into the helm of running the company, our school, all of our touring programming, and our annual season at Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts here in New York. And we did what was going to be a multi-year international tour to celebrate his legacy after his passing, which was cut short by the pandemic. So the future at Taylor, I must say, it's incredibly bright. It's incredibly exciting right now. There's a lot of new work that we're generating. Lauren Lovett is our resident choreographer, former dancer from New York City Ballet. She's with us for 5 years, making a lot of new work. There's a big investment right now in not just creation, but relationship building, the next generation of visual artists, the next generation of composers. And how do we create more access, certainly at Lincoln Center for bringing in audiences, but also how do we elevate the dance going experience? Um, so really like from soup to nuts, like from the first email you get to like the wave goodbye, that you're getting a really cohesive feeling of what the Taylor brand brings to the world. So it's almost like we're taking Paul's repertoire as our anchor and expanding that into every facet of what audiences will see. But there's a lot of conversations about the role of dance as not just reporting what's happening in the world, and offering us moments to reflect, but also to be a mirror back at humanity. You know, modern dance was, in its origins, was provocative. It was rebellious. These were the iconoclasts reacting to vaudeville and Broadway and ballet. And they also confronted humanity, and they were like, this is where we are going to make you feel something. You all may not feel the same thing, but you know, the human expression, the human feeling is on the line, and we're going to bring that to you full throttle. So we're bringing that into the new work as well. So it's that marriage of the old and the new.
I mean, I think you're doing a fantastic job of showcasing these historic works, but also bringing in the right choreographers to really bring the company into the next decade ahead. And
thank you.
We're just so excited to have you.
I can't wait to be back. I'm excited.
Yeah, and I mean, for people that want to join, we're going to have a pre-show chat with you. We'll have a posted Q&A. There's going to be master classes for dance students if anyone's interested in that. And actually on Friday night, we're having some dance artists going to be at 78th Street Studios to kind of do a little like movement and talking about the company. And that will be fun too, because I think that's going to be non-dance audiences typically that will be, like you said, getting to know the company in a new way for the very first time. So we're really excited about all of these events that we have with you guys. And thank you for your time.
Of course. I would just say to audiences who like I find audiences when they come to modern dance or contemporary dance are always looking for meaning. You know, like, what does it mean? And I think just my advice is to just ask yourself how it makes you feel. And how you felt.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And it will be next week before we see you.
I'm excited. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you.
All right. Bye-bye.